At the peak of September, almost 200,000 Americans were on strike.
Isn't that incredible?
200,000 Americans were on strike.
And why?
And why? When I started doing research into it, there's only 6% of privatized professionals who are unionized.
That's interesting.
6%.
That's much smaller than I would have
It's
expected.
a tiny amount.
Yeah.
And yet we are seeing inside that 6%, they have the ability to make massive impact. Whether it's Amazon or the entire scripted world in Hollywood, they've been brought to their knees essentially because of union strikes. So we've been putting a lot of effort recently into structuring and preparing our business for the next year.
Yeah.
And really, this is the first time that we've really focused on not just the next year, but like we're looking at the next potentially 10 years. We're setting like 1 year goals, 3 year goals, and 10-year goals. It's kind of an exciting, super nerdy experience for me to be doing all of this planning. And a big part of that has been like defining core values, defining our purpose, our core purpose, our core vision. And it's daunting. Like it's really actually daunting to be doing that kind of heavy lifting for what was originally a small business, because I'm realizing that our 10-year goal is to have this small business actually be a large business.
Yeah. I mean, I am so stoked because all the process stuff we've been doing lately is right in my wheelhouse. The way that entrepreneurial businesses begin, where it's just everything's on fire and going and moving and like you're, throwing spaghetti against the wall, seeing what sticks. All of that is completely anti the way Jihi works.
Yeah. Anti-Jihi. I would agree.
Anti-Jihi. It makes me 100% nuts. So now that we are like defining core values, defining core purpose, putting processes in place, to really ultimately better serve those that we are trying to serve.
Yeah. Even defining who we're trying to serve.
Right.
Like defining them more than just a customer, but defining them actually as a mission.
Yes. Which, in your heart, it's always what you've talked about, right? It's always the way we have moved forward.
Yeah.
But because it was never defined, it was so easy to get distracted by opportunity, right? Because once you start putting yourself out there, more opportunities start coming your way. And, which ones do you take? Which ones do you turn down? Yeah. You're building, and so you don't really want to turn any of them down, but they can be a distraction from your core purpose, right?
I really like that term, that distracted by opportunity, because that is exactly what I am realizing now after we've been at work probably for the better part of 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Getting to the place where we can define these cores.
Yeah.
And now it's, early October, we have defined our cores and we're still giving ourselves like 2-ish weeks.
Yeah.
To test drive them. Like,
yes,
is this our core purpose? Are these our core values? Is this our core, business need?
Yeah.
And it's really interesting to me to go through that process. And I'll be honest with you, one of the things that is the most daunting to me is that the team that we have built to bring us to this point, and we are $1 million company now.
Yeah.
Like we're beyond $1 million in valuation and we're closing in on $1 million in current annual revenue.
Yeah.
We have exceeded $1 million in lifetime revenue like months ago. There's only 9% of businesses in the entire United States that make more than $1 million in annual revenue. Like we are in the top 9% of businesses.
Yeah.
The thing that makes me sad is that the team that got us here is unlikely to be the team that gets us to the next level.
Yeah.
The people that we've worked with, the contractors that we've hired, the people that we've hired who have helped us to build up to 1 million, they have to choose whether or not they want to continue being part of the team that goes to 3 million, 5 million, 50 million, whatever comes down the road, right?
Right.
And that's scary to me because I care about them.
Yeah.
And I'm also realizing that I care about my people because I'm still kind of an immature CEO. Mature CEOs understand you have to separate caring for the people from caring for the business.
Right.
And that's been a huge learning point for me is I need to start seeing the business as an asset not as like a little child.
Right.
And there's all this growth in the process, and it's been an exciting period of growth, and it's been an exciting opportunity for me to grow as a business owner and a business leader. But it's also like, it's sad, man. It's people are going to get fired. People are going to quit. Other people are going to get hired, and I may never really know their names.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of wild to think that there's going to be people who work in our company in the future who I may only cross paths with once or twice a year.
Right.
And they may never meet the threshold to be like remembered.
Right.
Director CIA, well, there was one reason that the director of CIA knew me, and it had nothing to do with my skill on the job. But the director of CIA doesn't know most of the people that work for him.
Yeah.
Right? The director of, when we worked at CVS Health, the CEO of CVS held no idea who we were.
Right.
Right? So there's no responsibility on the part of the leader to know the people, but the people all have a responsibility to know the leader. And it's really kind of, it's a hard transition for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it really is like watching your children grow, right? I mean, what your kids need when they're 5 is not what they need when they're 15. And a business is just like that, where when you get to a certain point, your business needs something very different than what it needed to get to that point. Yeah. So when you make all the adjustments that need to be made to grow beyond, the $1 million mark, people, it's not going to be the same business that they were originally working in. And maybe they're really excited about that. Like, I'm really excited about all the structure and the professionalization, and that gets me going. But other people might not like that. Or once you have further narrowed and defined what your core purpose is, maybe they're not really interested in that anymore, and that's okay, right? Because they'll find other opportunities that are better fits for them, and then the company itself will find the people that are right for the company to really take it to that next level and to really serve whoever it is that they're trying to serve in the best capacity, right?
Yeah, what we're talking about really, I think, is the challenge of affluence, right? The challenge of wealth, the challenge of success. And lots of people know this challenge. We know what it's like to grow up poor and then get to the place where you're earning more money than your parents ever made. What it's like to go to school with people who, when you check back in with them as an adult, you have wealth, you have assets, you have status that they still don't have because they never progressed to the point of success or affluence that you have. And when you come to realize that you, as an adult and a success story and a hardworking whatever, business owner, entrepreneur, executive, career-minded individual, academic, whatever, when you realize that you have left behind the people that you started with, it's sad, it's hard.
Yeah.
I left behind the people that I went to high school with. I left behind the people I went to college with. I left behind the people that I started the job with. And now you're affluent, you're successful, you've got responsibilities that they don't have. You have a completely different set of values now. You have a completely different perspective. You have a completely different
mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, one of the challenges as you grow like that is that, like you were saying, the CEO of CVS has zero idea of who we are. But, on his, whether or not he knows all the people doing the work on the bottom, he still has to keep in mind the balance between the happiness and productivity of those people and the value that they bring to the company.
Yeah.
And that's a balance that you even as you get further away from the people doing the work, or doing like the day-to-day work, you have to keep in mind how do you balance, keeping them with you, right? With what the business actually needs from them.
I think this is going to be an awesome conversation, and I'm super excited because to talk about this with someone who grew up in the world of social work.
Oh yeah. And
for somebody who grew up very left-leaning liberal, I am very excited to kind of get your thoughts on business and growing a business and employee relations and balancing profit against purpose and moral compass, right? And really diving into what it's been like for you to go from a poor liberal household to an affluent household that we have brought more center with projections of the kind of affluence that we have in the future, right? Because we are very much projecting an incredible amount of wealth for us and for our family and for our business as we move forward. But before we jump into that conversation, I want to take just a moment to thank the sponsor for today's episode. Our sponsor today is Aura. Aura is a cybersecurity company for the everyday person. And I'll tell you what right now, that the everyday person might not really feel like cybersecurity is of value to them, but the average affluent person, the average person who has a healthy amount of money in their 401k and their savings account, somebody who understands that their success is tied to their identity and to their digital footprint, that person absolutely understands the importance of having a cybersecurity solution for themselves. For me, I use Aura to protect my data online. I use Aura to protect my identity online. I use Aura so that I can track my information that's floating around on the dark web, and so that I can remove and erase my data from anything from the dark web to overt, legally viable data brokers that exist on the internet, to keep down the phishing emails that I get, to keep away the spam phone calls that I get. All of that comes through Aura's services. And another thing that I really value is that because I am always on the go as a dad, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, it's helpful to me that I can access Aura's full suite of tools right from my mobile phone, whether I'm looking for a VPN or whether I'm looking to check on the financial status of one of my credit cards, or whether I'm just looking to check my credit records to date, my credit history, my credit reputation, my credit score. I can do it all right there on the app that I carry in my pocket with Aura. So if you've been looking for a way to minimize the risks and minimize the dangers that are present for you in your day-to-day life as a career-minded executive, as a entrepreneur, as a professional of any variety, go ahead and check out aura.com/everydayspy, where you can sign up for a complimentary 2-week trial offer of Aura's full suite of services, only if you are part of the community that's watching this podcast right now. Everyday Spy has partnered with Aura as an official sponsor, and we have been users of Aura for the better part of the last 3 months. We believe in the product and we use the product, and that's why we are happy to sponsor the product and have them have their support for conversations like this. So if you want to, just click down in the description below. You'll find a link to that free 2-week trial offer at aura.com/everydayspy, or you can visit that in your own web browser anywhere you choose, aura.com/everydayspy, and you'll get an opportunity to sign up for your own complimentary 2-week trial offer and take Aura for a test drive for yourself so that you can see how much satisfaction and peace of mind comes from really understanding who has your digital data and who doesn't. Now, we are talking about affluence and we're talking about wealth and we're talking about growing both through our business. How does that feel to you? Because from the time that you were a little girl, your parents always raised you to kind of see the world very sacrificially. Very much where like you almost define your success by your level of poverty.
I mean, yeah, I grew up in a very traditional, my mom was born in the early 50s. My grandmother was born in the early 30s. A very traditional household of, you work your way up, you check all the boxes, you do the right thing, and you work your way up the ladder, and you work for one company, your whole life. And I remember what a big deal it was when like Who Moved My Cheese came out, because it was so applicable to my parents who, were let go from a number of jobs, and so it's definitely been a mindset shift for me and a journey for me as we became entrepreneurs, because it's not something I ever thought I would do. And so I've read a lot of books. We've had, I make sure that I sit in on meetings with other entrepreneurs and other wealthy people, and I take in their ideas and I ask questions because the truth is, I grew up with a poverty mindset, and everything was from the perspective of, if I do the right thing, if I just bide my time, somebody's going to notice me. I will climb up the ladder. This is the process. And I was always afraid of, because my parents are this way, afraid of losing, right? I was never confident that every next step I took was going to be successful. And if it wasn't successful, that's okay, because there's another opportunity waiting. It was, I'm going to do this thing. It's going to work. And if it doesn't work, I'm royally fucked, right? And what am I going to do? So I'm just going to be afraid of it, and I'm going to just toe the line.
You know, it's really interesting because, you know, your parents, I don't think they intentionally built that mindset into you.
No.
Because I know talking to them, they were very focused on kind of having you make none of the mistakes they made.
Yes.
So they wanted you to go to law school. They wanted you to have a good, steady job. They wanted you to invest in your career and your future, right? That they wanted the best for you all the time.
Yeah.
And I don't think they realized that in encouraging you down that road, the other thing that they built into your psyche was this idea that you had to earn someone else's approval
Right.
in order to be a success. You needed to meet the qualifications to graduate college. You needed to meet the qualifications to get a law degree. You had to meet the qualifications to get a bar.
Right.
Right. And then even through that whole process, even while you were going through all of these loops, and let's be honest, you graduated high school at 16.
Yeah.
I mean, my love, you're kind of freakishly smart. It's very sexy to me, but you're kind of weird. You graduated high school at 16. You had your first undergrad degree by 19?
No, 16, and then the summer I turned 21.
So
so I graduated when I was 20. Yeah.
You graduated college when you were 20.
Yeah.
And you had a bachelor's degree.
Yeah.
And then you went on to get 2 master's degrees.
Yeah.
And you had all of this education done before I even met you at CIA when you were 27 years old. So somehow between high school and 27, you had accumulated 4 degrees, including a law degree. My love, I barely had an undergraduate degree by the time I was 27 years old.
Yeah. But what's interesting about you is that for me, the idea of trying and failing was not supported. There was no try something, and if you fail, it's okay. Just try something again. It was
don't try anything that
it was, this is the path. You do these things and you will succeed, right? Where for you, I feel like you started on, this is the path, do these things, you will succeed. But very quickly you were like, this isn't right. And so you already had this, I mean, I think by the time you were 19, you were like, this is a bunch of bull, what people are being fed. And
at least what I was being fed.
And I'm just going to forge my own path. And I'm, you were at the Air Force Academy already, so you had to kind of follow that route. But you were like, I'm gonna make the most of it while I'm in it, and then I'm gonna learn my lessons. And then when I get out, I'm gonna try what I want to try.
Yeah.
And if I fail, that's okay, because there's always another opportunity for me. And that took me until like last year to learn. And it's only after reading like 5 books you recommended and like, talking to a coach and whatever.
I do feel lucky that I did I adapted to the fear of failure, because it's still scary.
Yeah.
But I adapted that fear fairly early on. And I'm not the only one. There's a lot of folks out there who are not afraid to fail. And I love meeting those people and I love talking to those people. And the only thing that ever makes me sad about those folks is when they're somehow convinced that they're wrong.
Yeah.
Because the whole world tries to convince them, their parents, their spouse, their employer, right? Even like the system. The system of economics in the United States tries to convince you that if you are willing to take risks and fail, you're not healthy. There's something wrong with you, where that's just not true. Our whole country was built on the backs of people who were willing to take risks and fail. Think about the first crazy sons of bitches who crossed the ocean to come here.
I know.
That, holy shit.
Yeah.
That was like, how crazy, how desperate, how risk tolerant must you have been to get on a ship with your family and cross in a wooden boat with sails across the ocean to come here to an unknown place.
Completely unknown.
Undeveloped with no infrastructure. And then like, you're going to get off the boat and guess what you're going to do? Freaking hour 1. Get your ass to work.
Yeah.
Building shelter, planting a farm. Holy smokes, dude.
Yeah.
Terrifying.
Yeah. But what I have always felt that I find interesting too is we need the people who want to toe the line. right? The country, yes, the country was built and new innovation is built on the backs of people who have these big ideas, who aren't afraid to fail.
Crazy sons of bitches.
Crazy sons of bitches. But those crazy sons of bitches need people who are very practical and very level-headed, and they want to learn that thing that you want to do and do a good job and just do that job. And that's totally okay, and we actually need them, right? So for every CEO out there, for every business owner, they have to have people under them who want to do the job every day, right?
Yeah.
And then they have to consider, what do those people need to be able to continue to do that job well?
So right away, my brain goes to the fact that at the peak of September, just a month ago, at the peak of September, almost 200,000 Americans were on strike.
Isn't that incredible?
200,000 Americans were on strike.
And why?
And why? And you know what's interesting is, you know, you and I have multiple media projects, television, film, book, our own business is in many ways a publishing business. So we have been impacted by the strike that was happening by the Writers Guild in LA. So the writers were on strike. I think that they just lifted that strike at the beginning of October, but they've been on strike for, I think, 4 months or 6 months.
Yeah,
it was a long time. Much longer than any strike in the past. So most Americans are aware that there was this giant strike that was affecting streaming television. What people don't realize is that the Screen Actors Guild is also on strike. I think they might still be on strike. I don't know if that one's been lifted.
They've settled yet, yeah.
And then on top of that, like there's the threat of strikes coming from union auto workers.
Well, there are strikes and threats of more strikes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then like there are strikes that people don't even realize. Like Starbucks employees within certain states went on strike. Amazon warehouse employees within certain states have been on strike. Hotel cleaning staff have been on strike. Like there are all these strikes happening.
The healthcare workers.
The healthcare workers right now at Kaiser Permanente are on strike. There are like hundreds of thousands of Americans on strike. And I think what blows my mind is a couple things. So first, when I start reading about that, the idea of group negotiation, right? There's a term for that. What do the unions call that? Collective bargaining. The idea of collective bargaining is a challenging idea, especially in 2023 for a lot of us to wrap our minds around. But the other thing is that when I started doing research into it, there's only 6% of professionals, like privatized professionals, who are unionized.
That's interesting.
6%.
That's much smaller than I would have expected.
It's a tiny amount, right? So of all the private employees, private means not public, so we're not talking about school teachers or state employees.
Government employees,
right? We're talking about private citizens who work in companies. Only 6% are unionized at all.
Yeah.
And yet we are seeing that inside that 6%, they have the ability to make massive impact, right?
Yeah.
Like whether it's Amazon or Starbucks or the entire, scripted world in Hollywood, they've been brought to their knees essentially because of union strikes.
Right, which is the whole point of a union. What's the why question that comes up for me is that companies who hire workers who belong to a union take on a known risk, right? The whole point of a union is for this collective bargaining power, right? So when you hire them, you know that this is a risk for your company, that if they are unhappy, they can strike and then they are negotiating something from you. So why do the strikes ever happen is my question, right? There is a tipping point, obviously, that happens where people are like, you're really just not doing right by us, so we're going to strike. So how does the company miss the assessment, or they're making the assessment and they're just kind of letting it get to that tipping point where they're like, you know what, we can handle a strike and we'll just see how far we can get. Like what's happening there is the why that I want to know.
Yeah. And what's interesting to me now that like we started this conversation talking about our own business growth.
Right.
And as we continue to hire people in the future, we actually have to consider what states are we hiring in?
Yeah.
What industries are we hiring from? Like, are we going to run into this union question ourselves? And it's made me ask myself some hard questions, and I think that you're going to be surprised when I tell you some of my conclusions. So first, I think it's important to note that not all strikes are successful.
Right.
For example, the Starbucks employees who are striking, I'm almost certain that corporate Starbucks has told them to piss off.
Yeah.
That they're like, we're not coming to work. And Starbucks corporate is like, okay, then you're not getting paid.
Right.
Because it's only in a few states where they even have the ability to strike. And the only reason Starbucks went into those states was because they wanted to have a certain market saturation.
Right.
So now that those employees in those states are striking, Starbucks is like, well, you know what? We're diversified.
Yeah.
We've got coffee on the shelves at convenience stores. We've got coffee that people can order. We've got coffee in 49 other states that are doing fine. So you don't want a job? You go figure it out, right? And oh, by the way, don't call us to be your reference for your next job. So it's really interesting because sometimes the collective bargaining power isn't really bargaining power at all.
Right.
But then on the other side, you do have situations like what we have in Hollywood with the screenwriters, right?
Yeah.
Or with the writers guilds, because now they have successfully collectively bargained increased wages and protection and long-term revenue for the things that they create. They've stifled the use of AI and controlled the use of AI. So there's some benefits there that they've been able to use collectively bargaining. And arguably, the industry as a whole will benefit from it, arguably. But what I landed on that's interesting to me is I would have never thought that I would have said that unions are a good thing. But I think, now that I think about unions as a business owner, I think they are a good thing. And the reason they're a good thing is not, I think, what you think.
I'm so interested to hear.
I think unions are a good thing because unions ensure that single-skilled or unskilled workers, and I know that's going to piss people off when I call them single or unskilled, unions ensure that single-skilled or unskilled workers make the most money they can possibly make, which means the tax base for the United States is always growing because that tax base is those skilled workers. The federal government knows that the business owners who make millions of dollars a year are using and stashing their income into securities and savings accounts and investment accounts where they'll get taxed at circa 12%, 14% overall. And it'll be a long-term tax. So for a millionaire, they might only pay 12 cents on the dollar in taxes. And they may not pay that until 15 or 30 years from now. Whereas your average automotive worker who makes $110,000 right now because they're a trade technician in an automotive factory, that person will pay 19% tax right now.
Yeah.
So anything the federal government can do to maximize the amount of money that man makes or that woman makes means that the federal government will tax them at the maximum amount every single year. Whereas if it was left to the business owner, that person would make less money, so they might pay less taxes. So I think that the reason unions are a good thing, in my opinion, the reason that Biden is such a strong supporter of unions is because he understands this from his long term in office.
That's really interesting.
Because if you think about it, when Biden started as a politician, and the reason I'm bringing up Biden is because everybody knows he's pro-union. Biden started as a politician in the 1970s. Guess how much of the private population, the private career population, guess how many people were unionized in 1970?
Was it more or less than now?
30%.
Yeah, it was more, right? I think
30%.
unions have been in decline.
Yeah, unions have been in decline.
Yeah.
But 30% of the population was unionized in
That's
1970.
fascinating.
So whenever 30% of the population got a 5% pay increase, the benefits for the U.S. tax base, for the federal government to tax all of these people, right? They got more money faster at a higher rate. And they did it by penalizing the CEOs, not the people. So then unions started driving this engine where they claim to be helping the people, and arguably they are helping the people,
right.
except for the fact that when unions unionize and people get paid more, the cost of goods goes up. So now every car that you buy is more expensive because the union workers are making more money and everybody's paying more taxes on both the car and the union. So the federal government makes out with more money because the federal government is the only entity in this that can't generate their own revenue. The only way they make more money is by making more money from taxes.
What an interesting perspective I'd never considered before. Yeah. I had always viewed unions as a very much, they're good for the workers so long as you have somebody intelligent at the helm negotiating, because a union can tank a company, right? We've all heard the stories when you don't have intelligent negotiations happening. So that is a fascinating perspective that I have never heard before.
Because when I'm being frank, as a business owner, in the future, what I want to hire, I want to hire people who produce at the highest levels, who I can pay at the lowest reasonable levels, so that I can incentivize them with a bonus structure to overperform. So then if I have 100 employees, I pay a minimal amount for all 100, but for the highest performing 50, I pay them enough or more than enough so that they're incentivized to stay.
Right.
Where the lowest performing 50 are incentivized to leave because I don't want them. What I want is a team full of high performers, even if everybody who's a high performer makes a big bonus. Remember when we were with CVS Health? They gave us a bonus structure.
Yeah.
We didn't even think about leaving CVS Health until their bonus structure stopped delivering.
Yeah.
Because we were working our butts off.
Yeah.
And then one year we made a $4,000 annual bonus, which isn't much. Now that I'm a business owner, I realize how that's not much. We had a $4,000 bonus one year and a $2,000 bonus the next year, even though we worked hard and overachieved our goals. And that was when I was like, I am not doing this for a living. This is some bullshit.
Yeah.
And the company was like, oh, we're growing and this and that and the other thing, so you're going to see it in your bonus. No, that's not how it works for me. So now as a business owner, I'm like, you know what? If my people want to unionize so that everybody makes more money, I'm totally fine with that, because I'm understanding that I'm still only paying taxes on my income. And the way that I, as an affluent, wealthy person, am dispersing my income is through tax incentivized vehicles, because I'm saving my money. I'm investing my money. All the things that the federal economy wants me to do as a wealthy person. It wants me to buy stocks and bonds and invest and grow my business. So I'm incentivized by getting less tax burden. But the average cog, you were saying, like the people who just do the work, we need those people. We need cogs, right? We need people who are happy to do their job. The federal government needs them too, because they're just going to sign off and pay whatever taxes rate they have to pay, because they are literally not thinking of the future. They are only thinking of the next paycheck.
Right. Well, I mean, that is the future they're thinking of.
Right.
Right. And we need that.
We do. We need that. And what I'm saying is I didn't even realize we need it for more than one reason.
Right.
We don't just need it because we're business owners. We need it because our federal budget, the way that presidents can promise not to raise taxes, or the way that presidents can secretly raise taxes without people realizing it's being raised, is when they keep the tax levels the same, but they increase the payment to people.
Right.
Because now, instead of making 12 cents on the dollar for everybody who's working, because they make less than $60,000 a year, once they make $65,000 a year, you can tax them all for 14 cents on every dollar. And when you're talking about 100 million people paying 2 cents extra every single paycheck, that becomes significant.
Right.
So that's what I'm realizing. That's the engine that grows our economic base. And I can support that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Very interesting.
So all that to say, I'm shocked to say that I support unions. And I'm shocked to say that, good job, Biden administration. Driving unions home, right? Because the other thing is unions are going to be the ends of themselves. Like they are the reason there's only 6% of unionized employees right now. I'm doing all the talking. I'm sorry.
No.
The reason there's only 6% of private citizens who are part of unions is because unions have essentially adhered to industries that are being outpaced, industries that are being left behind.
So you don't see a future for unions, even though there's benefits?
I think that the benefits to unions, I think there will always be unions, and I think they're going to change their organizational structure, right? Like right now we're seeing that smaller unions are happening. So instead of national unions, there's like state or municipal unions. So I think there will always be unions. But do I think they're going to be as successful as they were in the past?
Right.
Look at the Starbucks union, right? I don't know which state that is. I don't know if it's California or Oregon or what.
Yeah.
But essentially, like the laws in one state don't apply to another state, and corporations are multi-state. Imagine what happens whenever goods are all digital goods. And when AI, like I thought it was crazy that the Screenwriters Guild or whatever it was made it so that screenwriters can't, like, AI can contribute to their creative vision, but AI can never replace them.
Yeah.
All you're doing is just hampering your own industry, because that means that if you're not hiring Screenwriters Guild assets, you can use AI.
Right.
So eventually AI is going to reach the threshold where it creates something that's 80% as good as people. And guess what? I mean, if you've ever watched Netflix and you've ever watched a cartoon for your kids that was created in like Vietnam or China,
Oh, yeah.
we've seen dozens of these shows.
Oh, yeah.
They're not good.
No.
But they don't have to be.
They don't have to be, for sure. The kids love the crappiest
kids
cartoons.
love the crappiest cartoons. They
Oh
love the
my
bright
gosh,
colors and the
yeah.
action and whatever else. And guess what? Adults love it too.
Yeah.
There are shows that you have had me watch where I'm like, why am I watching this show? But you personally love it. And we live in a content era where content for content's sake is going to find an audience. So if you demand that you will only use human writers and you will never use AI writers, you're just going to become obsolete. Because eventually, there's so much money and effort going into machine learning and machine writing, they will eventually get 80% as good. And even if you have 5 human writers and they're not associated with the union, but they are reviewing and editing what 5 machines create, you basically just replaced an entire industry.
Yeah. I think it'll be interesting to see how, because the push and pull between employer and employee is age old. So I think it will be interesting to see how that develops over time, because the fact is that employers don't always look out for the best interests of their employees.
Right.
And so employees have to have some kind of vehicle to have negotiating power. And unions and collective bargaining have been the most powerful tool, I think, to date. But there must be other ways, and we'll just have to see what comes out.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah. And the future is unknown in this area, but in terms of like my own self-discovery, because when I hear about the strikes and when I see how it impacts our business, there's a part of me that gets defensive, and there's a part of me that's like, these unions are terrible. My mom is a nurse. Yeah, she hates nursing unions. Right? We've had plenty of friends who are teachers who hate teaching unions. Yeah, because like the union makes it so that it's not about the service they're providing. It's not about maximizing patient health or maximizing student learning. It's about maximizing your own benefits as a teacher, which is not what you're supposed to be focused on. You're supposed to be focused on maximizing what you do for the community.
And one of the downsides to a union is it's made up of people who are really hard-charging hard workers and some people who are just along for the ride, who don't help anybody else.
Dues are dues.
Right.
Right. So you got, and according to the 80-20 rule that we espouse in so much else, 80% of the population in a union are going to be lazy. 20% are going to be hard charging. Yeah. The union benefits the 20%, but it also benefits the 80%. Yeah. And then the 80% give the 20% a bad reputation. Right. So even the people in a union don't often like their union. Like, it's really amazing to me how it all plays out, because I don't live inside of a union, so I don't understand it. But I will say that I am kind of surprised in my own reflection and my own self-discovery that I do see the net benefit of a union right now. Yeah. Because as much as I hate to say it, like, wealthy people and all the millionaires and billionaires that we've hung out with, they don't like paying taxes. Right. They have no problem paying taxes, but they want to conserve their money and direct their money so that they control it. Because the one thing that they have in common is that none of them trust the federal government to manage their money better than they can. Yeah. But once you step outside of the millionaire circle, your average citizen absolutely believes that the federal government can manage money better than they can. which is why your average person doesn't donate to charity. Because they're like, why should I donate to charity? Federal government's going to fix all the social problems anyways, right?
Yeah.
Why should I give to cancer? Federal government's subsidizing it. Why should I help farmers? Federal government's going to subsidize it, right? So there's a level of responsibility there that makes it so that when you are making up to $120,000 a year and you're getting taxed at 22%, it hurts, but you still do it.
Right.
Whereas the people who like make $300,000 a year, they do not let anybody take their money.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they don't use the same benefits either. I would say your average worker actually sees the benefit of government benefits because they are more likely to use them than somebody who is wealthier.
True.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the thing that I really want to make sure we do as we continue growing our business is start to impart like that financial perspective shift where people understand you are the best steward of your money, and wealth is something you can achieve.
Yeah.
You have achieved it. I have achieved it. We will continue to achieve it. The people who currently work for us have all achieved higher levels of wealth than they had before they started with our company.
Right.
And I'm very proud of that. That is something that as we continue hiring people, I don't want to make employees. I want to make wealthy, affluent members of a team. That's what we're going for with our company. Everybody we hire, we're going to hire them with an eye towards showing them the path to make more money than they ever thought possible.
Right.
Not because they're greedy,
Right.
but because they understand that the mission of our business is to change lives. And the way that we change lives as a business is by seeing financial transactions come through that fund all the projects that we're going to be doing to change lives.
Right.
If we can draw, like I've heard people talk about a flywheel, if we can connect the right employees who have a passion for changing the world with projects that actually change the world and make money, then the money comes right back in to the employees who are changing the world.
Yeah.
And then boom, we don't ever slow down. We don't ever stop.
Yep.
That's my vision. That's my mission. That's what 6 weeks of, sleepless nights and
focus
has done for me.
Yep.
But enough talk about me and enough talk about, the truth of how taxes steals from the poor, because it's amazing to come to that conclusion. But what was our question for today? We got a great question for today. I just don't remember what it was.
Yeah, somebody asked, what do other countries do better than the U.S. that you would like to see adopted, or vice versa? What does the U.S. do best that you would love to see exported?
Medicine. I'm saying it right now. Medicine.
That other people do better or we do better?
So we just had this conversation. You just scheduled your COVID shot.
Yeah. And then unscheduled it.
So here's a perfect example, right? When COVID was at its peak, the federal government subsidized shots for everybody. And the pharmaceutical companies built them. And it was guaranteed that every shot would be purchased by the federal government.
Correct.
And the price per shot
was about $26.
Fast forward to this year. Now COVID is no longer being subsidized by the federal government.
Correct.
But it is covered under pretty much every healthcare plan, right? We aren't covered under a healthcare plan. We self-insure.
Right.
Underneath the healthcare plan, the average price per shot was like,
so if you're covered by health insurance,
you pay nothing out of pocket.
You pay nothing out of pocket,
but
right? You pay your premium.
But what is the health insurance company charged?
So
what were they supposed to be charged?
So there seems to be, we have lots of experience where we go to a doctor and they give us a price for whatever service they're going to give us. And we say, oh, well, we're not using insurance. And then they give us a completely different price. I mean, it's usually like half the price.
But before we get there.
But this COVID seems to only currently have one price this year. So individuals are being charged the same price that the insurance company is being charged. It was originally said to be they were estimating it was going to be about $130.
So 1 second, I want to pause there for a second. So there's no break in price between the self-insured.
Correct.
And those insured by a healthcare plan.
Correct.
And we already know that the federal government was charged $25-ish per shot in 2020, 2020, 2021, 2022. Right. Now in 2023, the same $25 shot is actually $130.
Well, so the reason I made my appointment was because they were estimating the shots are coming out. They're going to be available. It should be about $130. I make my actual appointment. The pharmacist calls me and says, do you have insurance? I say no. She says, okay, well, the shot's going to be, I said, can you just confirm the price of the shot? I think it's supposed to be $130. She says, it's $220. I said, oh, can you please cancel my appointment? Because $220 is an outrageous price for a vaccine. I have had many a vaccine in my life through the government. I've traveled all over the world. I've had to have all kinds of really weird vaccines too. I've never had a vaccine cost that much. And for a vaccine that is seasonal, right? A vaccine that is seasonal that I know for a fact does not need to cost that much.
Right.
It's an outrageous price, in my opinion, right? And then the fact that if a person does not have insurance, more likely than not, they cannot afford to pay $220 for a vaccine. And then by not having the vaccine, you risk them getting sicker. They already don't have insurance. They're going to be the people that end up in the hospitals. It's a very interesting pricing model to see the pharmaceutical companies come out with year one that they have commercialized the vaccine.
And that's exactly so that right there is why I say that the thing that the United States can learn from foreign countries is to change your fucking medical practice. Change the industry.
Yeah.
Because if we go to Thailand, that same shot is going to cost probably about $25 US or less.
Yeah.
And some of the best medicine we've ever seen was abroad.
Yes.
I remember the medicine in Abu Dhabi. I remember the medicine in Bangkok. I remember the medicine in Panama City. I remember the medicine in foreign countries was always very, very acceptable, like reasonable in terms of price.
Yes.
Anybody could get access to it. And like there was no insurance overlay. You could get insurance if you wanted it,
right.
but it was always there for private purchase. I'm not even talking about socialist countries where the federal government pays for it.
They were private.
I mean, you can pay for it yourself. Even in socialist countries where the government pays for it, they can choose not to pay for certain things, and you can still step in and pay for it yourself, right?
Right.
So our whole model of healthcare is absolutely outdated, and it works against public health. It's really there, and it's bureaucratic and it's administrative. It's not there to make pharmaceutical companies rich like people accuse. That's not what it's there for. It's bureaucratically complicated.
Yeah.
And because of that complication, the downstream and upstream elements of it have overpriced everything to make sure that after all the bureaucratic costs, they don't lose.
Yes. And that's the problem is that, insurance creates a fear, right? You are afraid that you're going to get sick and incur costs that you cannot pay when you are sick, right? So insurance steps in and they say, you know what, just pay us a monthly amount and we'll make sure that never happens to you. But the truth is when most people do the numbers, you're not getting what you're paying for.
Right.
And the prices are inflated because of the health insurance. So, there are absolutely situations where people would be out of pocket $300,000 because they had some kind of major incident or occurrence. But for the average person, that's not the case. And so it really does need to be, I would completely agree that the American healthcare model really needs to be revisited. I'm not saying I have the solution in hand, but it really needs people to be thinking outside of the box and revisit how we handle health insurance in a way that is profitable for everybody because of course it's possible. You just have to figure out the solution.
We know people who get dental work done by getting on an international flight, going to a foreign city, having top tier, even better than American dentists, work on stuff. And then they fly back home. It costs them a week of vacation and $1,000 round trip ticket. And even after all that, they are still better off because under their existing plan, that cosmetic trip wouldn't have been covered anyways, and it would have cost them $8,000 in the US.
Yeah.
Like, it's frustrating because, again, going back to our conversation about unions and the tax base, the exact people who are trapped using the American healthcare system are the people who do not have the affluence or the perspective to be able to leave the country, even temporarily, to get a procedure done in Panama, in Mexico, in Thailand, in Argentina,
Yeah.
right? And I'm not saying you need to go to freaking Venezuela to get something done,
Right.
but there's excellent healthcare out there within an 8-hour flight, and these countries have figured out how to do it and to make sure that their doctors and medical professionals live a reasonable and affluent life
Right.
with privatized medicine.
Right.
So that's where my brain went. That's a
Yeah.
great question.
Yeah.
Because for too often we think America does everything better than everybody else. Or the unspoken truth is
Right.
America is the best. We are most surely not the best.
Right. I mean, I met actually a doctor in the UAE who said, no country is perfect.
Yeah.
Right. And we just have to keep that in mind.
Folks, thank you very much for joining us. If you like this conversation, please subscribe, hit like, share it with a friend. Take a moment to visit our sponsor, Aura, and give a little bit of love to our sponsor for sponsoring this conversation at aura.com/everydayspy so that you can sign up and get your own cybersecurity solution for the next 2 weeks. And you can be totally free using that sponsor link. And of course, always, please leave us your thoughts, leave us your comments, leave us your questions. Jihi and I love to hear from you. We love to chew and argue and debate over the things that you value and over your opinions. And it's absolutely something that's super rewarding about being in a position where we get to learn from you and share with you our perspectives. We can't wait to see you for the next conversation. Thanks very much for joining us.
So fresh on me.